Everyone. So today we're talking about James Joyce, really one of my favorite authors from the last century, and just a genius wordsmith, and just a really fun guy to read. I mean, if you're into the semi-abstract, very I don't know, Irish kind of wordplay that he's got to offer, I mean, you will love this book. And this is a gift. This is a portrait of of the artist as a young man. It's a leather bound edition. I think it's Barnes and Noble edition. It might be. I think it's fancier than that. I don't think it's actually Barnes and Noble. Let me see. No, it's Easton Press, and that's probably an insult to Easton Press that I compared it to the Barnes and Noble editions. I'm sorry to Easton Press for that. Just a beautiful copy of the book, and I admittedly actually had already finished some of it, I think, on audio tape, and I kind of read some of it on here and listened to some of it on audio tape as I was going. But it is just so amazingly well done because there's no other book I've ever read where, as the character progresses, the writing style progresses, and not in a way, not to say like it was getting better or something like that, but it matches the time period of this young man's life, like everywhere in it. And I'm going to just read very briefly past the introduction, chapter 1. And it's just, I mean, if you like this, like, you are going to love the entire book because it just expresses so vividly the stages of childhood. It's not all like this. This is just the beginning because it is the very early years that it's kind of describing. But here we go. Once upon a time, and a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming down along the road, and this moo cow that was coming down along the road met a nice little boy named Baby Tuckoo. His father told him that story. His father looked at him through a glass. He had a hairy face. And it's just that very childish expression that it starts with. And as it progresses and grinds toward adolescence and adulthood, through the boarding school and college years, it very accurately puts together life through the lens of a young man, and a young man who's going through all sorts of, as young men do, going through all sorts of changes in life, in status, in I mean, his father goes through hard times and stuff like that. It's like one of those things, like as you grow up, they sell the old house and things just change, and that's a part of life. And I mean, it's just a beautifully expressed, I think, tribute to what it is to grow up. And I mean, obviously it's kind of limited in that it's only about a young man from Ireland, so not all of us are gonna understand that entirely, but I think a lot of it is very universal. Sorry, today's video is brought to us by iPhone. um, it's very beautifully expressed the whole way. There's several favorite passages which I just could never bring myself to mark up this book. Paperbacks I will mark through and through, and bend pages, but I of course I did not think to set aside some of my favorite passages from this. But trust me, there are favorite passages, and there are so many stages in the journey that the young artist, which of course I'm pretty sure is basically supposed to be James himself, although he's got a different name in this book, but I think it's obviously based off of a lot of his experiences growing up. In all of that, there's just so much change in the book. That's the best way to describe it, is that there's so much change that happens in the book, and it's again described in the stages of life in the style that you would expect it to be self-described. And I mean, that opening passage just shows you how intimate and how minuscule the detail of that writing is, and how I mean, it's just it's very staged, it's very practiced. It's almost you can tell he poured his whole life into this work, because I mean, it took him years to get this published. I don't know the whole story, but I remember that it was a grueling process for Joyce to get published, and it was actually thanks to Ezra Pound, I think, in the end, that he was able to get really anywhere, because it was just so difficult. I mean, you just heard the first opening pages, and like, if you weren't told that yes, this is a very important piece of literature, you'd say, oh my gosh, this is awful. And I think I was lucky because when I started it out, I actually did expect it to be something very impressive. And so because it wasn't what I expected it to be at all, I really wanted to stick around. And I'm so thankful I did for the whole journey, because I mean, what brilliant work. I mean, what a tribute to just I can't, I mean, I'm being serious when I say, like, what a tribute to civilization a work like this is. It's vivid. It's indescribably colorful. There's one particular scene where he's with his friends on the ocean, at the side of the ocean, like in the bay, I think, and like I it doesn't sound very impressive me talking about it, but because of the amount of technique and description and just the way that he really poured himself into this work, like, it was fantastic the way he just described this little scene of him seeing a girl frolicking in the water and him realizing just the amount of gracious freedom he had in that moment as a young man, and realizing, like, I have my whole life ahead of me. I can't let myself be bogged down by this religious timidity that I have, is kind of what he went through. And that really spoke to me as somebody who is very much a Christian, but has dealt with times of doubt, and just the complete and utter subjection, abjection that this character faces in this book to religious, I guess it could be called religious trauma, but just the religious agony of not knowing, am I saved? Am I doing the right thing? You know, who is God and who is he like, really? And what is this, what is my trajectory in life if I can't grapple with this, wrap my head around it? And it doesn't really matter, I think, to me, if you are very religious or not. And you personally being religious, you know, it is something we all deal with to some level when you grow up in a very cold religion. And I wouldn't, and this isn't me commenting on necessarily the kind of religion that my parents had, but just something that I kind of developed in my own very oddly introverted childhood, a very cold approach to God. And so that, I think, is why so much of the rest of the book has remained with me since then. And I mean, Joyce is just one of those things, though, that if you're not going to be into it, I definitely don't recommend you force yourself. I certainly couldn't make more than 10 pages into Ulysses, which is a very different work. I couldn't make it that far. And so I don't blame myself for just saying, this is not for me, and moving on and going to other things, because I don't believe you should force yourself to enjoy something that is not enjoyable. Literature, again, I always say this, has to be enjoyed for it to be worth your time. Please don't take it the wrong way if you do get a handle on this book, or if you just, I'll just look up the PDF and make sure it's something you'd want to read before buying it, a physical copy. And if it's not something that really reaches you, don't force yourself to overcome it as an obstacle. I don't think that that's the point in life or the point of literature. But my gosh, if it is something that speaks to you in those first few pages and really makes you want to stick around, do so for your own good, because it will impact you once you get through all of it. And there's just such a very fleeting sense, a fleeting sort of, it's a fleeting feeling that you get when you finally made it through those, and you look back on those years of your childhood. It's an experience I think all young men have had around the age of 19 or 20, or maybe later, 23 or 24. And once you've gone around through that, looking back through that lens, I mean, that's what it's like reading this book. I don't think I can say anything more about it that won't sound like gibberish, so I'm going to leave it at that. But please, if you can get your hands on a copy like this, or not exactly like this, I mean, this was probably expensive. It was a gift. But if you can get your hands on this and it's something you enjoy, like, please do enjoy it. Because I mean, what an amazing experience it is, getting to recollect the feeling of growing up, the feeling of understanding all of a sudden. those moments where you have this grand freedom that comes with making your way in the world. And just there's no other author I think that's ever understood that as much as Joyce has, or had, in his brief time on the earth. So it's been really great talking to you guys again. And the next video I'm going to put out, if it's not the one before this, will be on the book that I just put out. It's my second novel, and I'm going to talk to you guys about that either right before releasing this video or right afterwards. So prepare yourselves for that, because that one's going to be fun to talk about too. And you guys have a great rest of your days and a great rest of your day or week. I'll talk to you guys soon.